we must internalize the flatulation of the matter by transmitting the effervescence of the Indonesian proximity in order to further segregate the crux of my venereal infection. If I may retain my liquids here for one moment, I'd like to continue the redundance of my quote-unquote intestinal tract, see, because to preclude on the issue of world domination would only circumcise the revelation that reflects the aphrodisiac symptoms which now perpetrates the Jericho's activation. So, do not misinterpret the chauvinistic.
Give to the United Negro Scholarship Fund, because a mind is a terrible thing to develop without help.
Allow me to expose my colon once again. The ramification inflicted on the incision placed within the fallopian cavities serves to be holistic, taken from the Latin word jalapeno.
If you're not living it, you don't understand it. If you're not existing in it, you don't really get what's going on. When we hear a guy like Skip Bayless take stands in defense of, I'm not saying that because I'm sitting here, that's one of the bravest and most courageous things to do as a white brother or sister, is to identify with those whose backs are against the wall and to tell others who are in his position, be careful before you make snap judgments about what's going on there.
I praise him every time we have this talk. He praises him every time we have this talk. He praises him every time we have this talk. He doesn't, you know, he takes for granted. He thinks I'm just doing this, but he doesn't know what it means to us in our community to have him.
Amen.
To speak, because a lot of people wouldn't. When we first started this show, when we first started this show, and I thought, I said, okay, we're going to talk about it, we're going to be done with it. He said, nope, we're talking about it again. Be done with it. He said, nope, we're talking about it again. And I'm like, Skip, are you sure? I'm like, Skip, are you sure?
Why is Black Lives Matter?
Example B, BLM, or Black Lesbians Matter. These individuals never include the black males, only the black females. And the words or statements prove this point. Their objective is to push the LGBTQ narrative agenda, and their shield or headline is the so-called black people or black race.
Important for the US right now and in the world.
Black Lives Matter is our call to action. It is a tool to reimagine a world where Black people are free to exist, free to live. It is a tool for our allies to show up differently for us. I grew up in a neighborhood that was heavily policed. I witnessed my brothers and my siblings continuously stopped and frisked by law enforcement. I remember my home being raided. And one of the questions as a child I had was why? Why us? Black Lives Matter offers answers to the why. It offers a new vision for young Black girls around the world that we deserve to be fought for, that we deserve to call on local governments to show up for us.
And anti-Black racism is not only happening in the United States, it's actually happening all across the globe. And what we need now more than ever is a human rights movement that challenges systemic racism in every single context. We need this because the global reality is that Black people are subject to all sorts of disparities in most of our most challenging issues of our day. I think about issues like climate change. And how 6 of the 10 worst impacted nations by climate change are actually on the continent of Africa. People are reeling from all sorts of unnatural disasters, displacing them from their ancestral homes and leaving them without a chance at making a decent living. We also see disasters like Hurricane Matthew, which recently wreaked havoc in many different nations but caused the most damage to Haiti. Haiti is the poorest country in this hemisphere, and its inhabitants are Black people. And what we're seeing in Haiti is that they were actually facing a number of challenges that even preceded this hurricane. They were reeling from the earthquake. They were reeling from cholera that was brought in by UN peacekeepers and still hasn't been eradicated. This is unconscionable. And this would not happen if this nation didn't have a population that was Black. And we have to be real about that. But what's most heartening right now is that despite these challenges, what we're seeing is that there's a network of Africans all across the continent who are rising up and fighting back and demanding climate justice.
So Alicia, you said that when Black people are free, everyone is free. Can you talk about what that means?
Sure. So I think race and racism is probably the most studied social, economic, and political phenomenon in this country, but it's also the least understood. The reality is that race in the United States operates on a spectrum from Black to white. Doesn't mean that people who are in between don't experience racism, but it means that the closer you are to white on that spectrum, the better off you are. And the closer to Black that you are on that spectrum, the worse off you are. And the closer to Black that you are on that spectrum, the worse off you are. When we think about how we address problems in this country, we often start from a place of trickle-down justice. So using white folks as the control, we say, well, if we make things better for white folks, then everybody else is going to get free. But actually, it doesn't work that way. We have to address problems at the root. And when you deal with what's happening in Black communities, it creates an effervescence, right? So a bubble up rather than a trickle down. Let me give an example. When we talk about the wage gap, we often say women make 78 cents to every dollar that a man makes. Make 78 cents to every dollar that a man makes. Y'all have heard that before. But those are the statistics for white women and white men. The reality is that Black women make something like 64 cents to every 78 cents that white women make. When we talk about Latinas, it goes down to about 58 cents. If we were to talk about Indigenous women, if we were to talk about trans women, it would even go farther down. So again, if you deal with those who are the most impacted, everybody has an opportunity to benefit from that, rather than dealing with the folks who are not as impacted, right, and expecting it to trickle down.
So I love the effervescence bubbling up.
Effervescence, like champagne.